Welcome to the Code Authority, everyone, the show about the latest in safety science and the built environment and well beyond. I'm Phil Doherty, your host, and of course, this is all brought to you by UL Solutions, global leader in safety science. We are always working for a safer world here. Our guest today is James Graff, also of UL Solutions. He leads the Fire and Security Service Solutions Department, as well as the AHJ Outreach Team. That team handles engagement with code authorities, specifically the fire alarm and emergency responder communication enhancement system programs. James, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you for having me. Excited to do this.
Okay, we have a lot to talk about here today, and you are one of the top experts in the field. So you lead fire and security solutions here at UL Solutions, as we just said, and the AHJ Outreach Team. Could you tell us just a little bit about those two groups and what exactly it is that you do here?
Sure. So the Fire and Security Service Solutions group is all centered around fire alarms and then also burglar alarms. So commercial fire alarms, commercial burglar alarms. And then, of course, we have the emergency responder communication piece. And then we've got a couple of monitoring categories as well. So primarily what we do is we evaluate alarm contractors or those companies that provide those services. And we evaluate them, give them their listing, and the evaluation piece is a demonstration that they understand their requirements. So if you send a toaster in or you send that alarm panel in, it gets listed, but then what happens when it goes in the field? Our group is there to go to the buildings, to the properties where they're installed and make sure that they are installed correctly per the applicable code and also per the manufacturer's installation instructions from when it got listed. And we do that on an annual basis for our AHJs that utilize our program. And so we are all over the US and Canada.
Okay, that's really interesting. So how many people are on your team overall?
We have approximately 42 in our group, which includes our alarm system auditors themselves. That's the bulk of the team. But we also have, as you mentioned earlier, the AHJ Outreach Group, and that's kind of a separate team from within our group. And then we've got some technologists that their job is to really keep up with the technology and help with the training of our auditors and keeping everybody up to speed on all the changes that are coming in this industry.
Okay, and what locations do you cover? Are you just the United States? Are you global? Like, what kind of reach do you guys have?
We are global. However, the bulk of what we have on the burglar and fire programs are U.S. based and Canada based, but we have a couple of listings that in Mexico. We have some in the Philippines. I believe Dubai as well. So they're just kind of scattered out, but I'd say the majority of the work is in North America.
You mentioned the outreach team. So what exactly does the outreach team do? Like, how do they interact with both the codes themselves and the other code authorities out in the field? What does a typical day in the life look like for the outreach team?
So the outreach team is there to support our AHJs that utilize our program. So they do this by typically providing education or their own expertise, and they're made up of a variety of backgrounds. So we have some of the folks that are prominent people in the alarm industry and have now come over to UL Solutions, and then we've also got some former and retired fire marshals that came to us. And of course, their background is very vast. We even have one that was in law enforcement before going into the fire service. And he still provides education on fire investigations, expert witness testimony, all kinds of different things. So it's a vast background. And what we do is our users that we have out there, so our cities and towns that have implemented the program, the outreach team is there to support that. So if there's questions, if there's issues in the community, they try to bridge the gap between the alarm contractors and the AHJs. And we do that by doing annual town halls that are regionally based. And we'll bring in all the listed companies as well as the AHJs in that area. And we try to talk about the real problems that they might be facing in that area. At one point, we can collect data on the audits we do in that area so we can identify where there might be some weaknesses or some issues that we can help educate and improve for AHJs and the alarm companies together. So it's kind of it's three different stakeholders in here. And we always talk about the triangle, and it's UL Solutions, the AHJ, and the alarm company. And
Okay, so speaking of education, you can educate me just a little bit further here. All right, so in that triangle, we have UL Solutions, we have the code authorities, and then we have the alarm companies. So our actual customers in that case would be the alarm companies, correct?
correct. Our direct customer is the alarm company, and they are generally in place because the AHJ decided that in their town they wanted to utilize our program. And then the alarm companies, once listed, they have the ability to issue protected property certificates. So those are for, think retail or industrial locations throughout the town. They issue those certificates, and that's the alarm company's statement, their declaration that the system is being maintained, being tested, being inspected, responded to in compliance with the applicable code, which for fire alarms is at NFPA 72. So it's got that extra end user stakeholder in there. But typically when we interact as an outreach team, it's specific to AHJs and the alarm companies. And then if there's a problem, we've had some issues before where we had some school districts that were having some trouble, and with compliance, and they were looking for solutions on how they could do that. And we were able to meet with the alarm contractor, with the AHJ in that area. And as a group, we were able to discuss that together and find an acceptable solution that brought compliance and therefore safety to the schools in that district.
Okay, that's interesting. So does the community itself decide that they want to utilize your services? Or is it like the code authorities there or civic officials there and say, hey, we need UL Solutions and like the outreach team? Or is it the actual manufacturers of the alarms themselves who want to ease the process? Like, who typically contacts us first? Like, how does that get started?
It is the code authority. So
Okay.
that's another thing the outreach team does is when we have communities that are interested in the program, then we work with them hand in hand to help them navigate their political process to get that enacted. And it's typically on the fire prevention side of the fire department. So we very often are dealing with the fire marshals and fire inspectors in a given community. And they of course have people to report to, so they work upwards um, to be able to enact the program. And again, we draft ordinances for them. We help that piece of it. We've attended some city council meetings as well, so we can answer any questions about the program. We just want to make sure that we're supporting all the way from the beginning through the process, and then once the community is using the program, we're still there for all the years to follow. But like I said, doing those annual town halls, and also if we're called on anything, we come in and can provide whatever education expertise that we have. And of course, at UL Solutions, if it's something that our group doesn't know, we have vast resources that we can lean on to help us get the answer and get the AHJs the help they may need.
Okay, so when you get called in to solve a problem, what are, say, I don't know, like the top 2 or 3 biggest issues that you're typically dealing with? Like, what's most common that you actually have to solve?
It's usually to do with something that is an emerging technology type of thing. So if you think about how fast cellular networks and uh, internet communication has come along in the past few years, that was something that we really had to focus on. And as uh, customers are looking to save money, they're looking to get rid of the old traditional copper phone lines, and now they're looking at new services like internet service and that type of thing. And it's important for the reliability to make sure that uh, those areas where the communication is passing through, they're regulated, and that they meet some minimum requirements. So communication ends up being a big one. And then as the fire alarm technology has advanced, it's gone from some of the standard 2 and 4 wire systems to completely network systems. So staying up to speed on those is a helpful thing. And we do that from the inside here, and then we look to share that knowledge with our HJs and our alarm companies as we go. And of course, we learn a lot from the alarm companies, our own customers, and the HJs as well. So it's a very nice relationship we have of give and take, and leaning on and supporting each other.
Okay, yeah, you said that as people are getting away from the copper wires and moving more toward network, are you having to work a lot more with software now in what you're testing and inspecting there, or is that not growing quite as much yet?
The software is definitely growing, but from what we see that installed product. So I think the product group deals more with the software. However, as part of our audit, we're always with the alarm contractor when we go to the customer sites, the protected properties, and we do go through programming and make sure that times and priorities and things like that are programmed in. And of course, we're looking to make sure that those products are UL listed when we're out there in the field. So that gives us the comfort to know that that software and the advancing software that is there has been checked by UL Solutions in the lab.
Okay. All right. What about, let's say I'm like a building owner or I want to build a building, okay? I'm not a code authority and I'm not actually manufacturing the material. And in this example, I don't work for UL Solutions, although in real life, yes, of course I do. Um, how would I interact with you? Like I have like a plot of land sitting out there. I'm going to put up an office block, the whole 9 yards there. Am I ever going to talk to the UL Solutions team? Or does that just like happen off of my radar and I just benefit from what happens there?
Typically, you benefit. However, we're
Okay.
always here to support. And it kind of depends on what city you're in. So if you're in a community that utilizes the service called Central Station Service, then that means that's going to bring UL Solutions into play. So you'll be utilizing a listed alarm contractor to do the work because they have demonstrated that they understand and can deliver the code compliant features that are needed in that system. And through that, uh, the building owners will typically see us or the users as we do conduct our audits because again we're going to those areas and we are meeting with the alarm company and then we're actually going to that building that you built and we're assessing the fire alarm system that was installed in that building to make sure it's code compliant. And then year after year we are auditing. Each listed company gets a annual audit each calendar year. So we are looking at records and installation, service, response, the maintenance of the system, all of those things, because you can really have a perfect system that goes in and you give it a year of customers and service calls and, forklifts and many other things that can disturb the system. Things can change. So we want to make sure that it remains in compliance and that the people on the property remain safe and having that UL certificate on the property is a bit of confidence as well to the HJ, knowing that is under our program and it's something that's being looked at and being managed.
Okay. Um, what is your background? Like, I know you said before we started this call here that you've been at UL Solutions for 25 years. So, first of all, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
amazing. Were you anyplace else before you came here?
I started in the alarm industry in the Charleston, South Carolina area. And at the time, the alarm industry has lots of buyouts and mergers and things like that. So at the time, it was the original ADT Security, and I did some industrial installations for my first time for my first few months there, and then I moved to service and was a service tech for several years, and then eventually moved into service management position in South Carolina before relocating to North Carolina for UL Solutions.
Okay. And what drew you to this particular profession? And like, I'm asking you because we have like a lot of listeners here. At least I'd like to think so. And not necessarily everybody knows exactly what safety science is. And they know that code inspectors are sometimes we see the fire marshal come through and he looks at stuff. And that's about what some people know. So, what drew you to UL Solutions in particular, specifically after you've been working in your previous industry, very much related industry?
So we were a listed company. Our branch was listed in several categories, so fire and security. And so we would get visited by the UL auditors each year for the conducting the audit. And I learned so much through that from the UL auditors, and it allowed me to better understand the codes and standards and the importance of those. And as time went on, I was looking for opportunities, and this one opened up, and it was something that I really wanted to do because I felt like a lot of times people hear the word audit and they think that means, IRS audit, right? Somebody's going to come in here and slap my hand kind of thing. But I never had that experience with the auditors that came to me. It was more of a, hey, we're partners and you're helping me. So that's what I tried to do. I look forward to helping the alarm companies, helping AHJs, helping end users that were having problems with alarm companies, that type of thing.
Okay, and you mentioned earlier that there's a number of people on the team there with some pretty diverse backgrounds. What do you think is drawing them to the occupation here?
I think the same thing. I think the desire to help people is very strong. This is a very dynamic industry, so technology is moving so fast, and we're seeing lots of changes. And it's tough to keep up with that. So it keeps it interesting as we go. We have a lot of ongoing training. We carry typically most of us carry NICET certifications or similar certifications that are industry specific. And with that, we have to do continuing education. So there's so many credits each year we have to meet. So it's nice to be part of that and continue to learn. And in the end, a lot of what focus is about saving money for alarm companies and towns and that kind of thing, right? But really, the end result is the protection of people and property. So that safety aspect is important to all of us, I think. And UL Solutions, as a company, we really drive that safety piece in there and try to instill that in everybody. And I'm proud to be part of the team and part of UL Solutions that is out there making the world a safer place in many, many different areas.
Yes, it is. Okay, and finally, what do you find most rewarding about doing the job? I mean, you've touched on it quite a bit here, but what else do you find that's really enjoyable and rewarding about this?
I would say the relationships that we build through being able to help people and have, when we've got something complex that maybe we've not dealt with before, the network of AHJs that we have out there that we're able to converse with, and so many people that are within UL Solutions and out in the industry sit on technical committees of various NFPA chapters, and it's just a lot of resources there. And as we go through solving problems and navigating new technology, we build some pretty strong relationships, and it becomes one of those types of relationships where it's not a formal, hey, we need to set up a meeting thing. It's a text from an AHJ that says, hey, I'm having this problem. Can you give me a call when you need a minute? And a lot of times that may result in us actually traveling to that area to support however we can. And seeing the people so much, you do tend to build relationships.
All right, James, thank you very much for joining us today. This has been fascinating, and the UL Solutions and the Code Authority community is, of course, here to help you. You can sign up for our newsletter. That's one way that you can get in touch with us. You can go to ul.com, sign up for our newsletter there. You will get insights from many other experts, just like James here. We're also on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and we're on Spotify. So please check us out in all those places. We hope to see you there. Thanks again for joining us.
All right. Thank you.